We've obviously been really busy since the last time we saw you guys. We're getting ready to go into spring ball this week, and excited to get into the football. So we'll have 15 practices over the course of 5 weeks. Obviously, one of those weeks being spring break, so it'll be active. We'll treat it like a bye week, and we'll have 15 practices really spread over 4 weeks. In terms of, I know you guys asked me about some availability, so try to be organized for you. Guys that will be out for spring ball will be Demetrius Bell, Janier Bonner, Fennessy, Guthrie, Gatula, Bly Hill, Camden, Markway, Nelson, Gibson Pyle, Marks, Merritt, Gage Stenger, and four guys that are just waiting to get cleared are Connor Keneally, Tyson Terry, Trent Euler, and Jake Peters. So they've trained hard for 6 weeks, ready to get into football. I'll answer your guys' questions.
What was the thought process on moving spring football up earlier in the camp?
Yeah, with the roster turnover that now happens in college football, with the amount of players that come in the portal, with the amount high school kids now enrolling early, we felt like our school calendar moved up a week, so we started on the 10th as opposed to most years we started on Martin Luther King Day, Monday. So because we had an extra week on the front end, we wanted to lift for 6 weeks, but we wanted to get all these players really mainstreamed into the football. We wanted, we didn't want to go 8-9 weeks of them not being around their coaches, so we wanted to get into the fundamentals of football, kind of see what we have, and then really still have on the back end, because of our school year now, 6 or 7 weeks of training afterwards. So we thought it'd be a great way to install, kind of what we want to do offensively, defensively, and special teams. Really let the guys see where they are football-wise, and then have a chance to continue training after that.
What's Guthrie's injury?
He had a shoulder surgery, so he really kind of battled through the end of the year. Even in the bowl game, he played limited. Really a tough guy that wanted to finish the bowl game, but he had a labral tear that he had to have repaired.
You bolted that room quite a bit from the defensive back room, and it looks like you have quite a few safeties. How does maybe that position change with Rob Orchard? Does it change at all? Like, is the defense going to fundamentally stay the same for the safeties?
No, well, it's a completely new system, and I think the most exciting word, the thing that drew me most to Rob was his system. It was system, So we'll play 4-3. We'll play with a nickel at times, depending on personnel, and it's based out of quarters coverage. We'll play some one high. We'll play some man, and just a traditional 4-down front.
Hey, Matt, was it a no-brainer to bring back the spring game, and kind of what was the background on that decision?
Well, last year with the spring portal, 2 years ago we had a couple injuries. When they replaced the turf in Memorial Stadium, I felt a little bit better about it. But without the spring portal, it just didn't really incentivize us last year to be out there playing. And when people could watch that tape on national TV and then call a kid. So, but we missed it. We wanted to do it. We think it's a great thing for the fans. It's a great thing for people that want to come watch us play. And once they kind of changed the calendar, we went back to a more traditional setting.
Matt, how have you seen Calandria blend into this team as a quarterback coming in with the experience he has?
Yeah, I think the maybe the biggest adjustment in today's football is that you're not really building off the previous year's team. I mean, it's kind of a brand new team every single year, and so everybody, whether they were here before or whether they're coming in as a freshman or coming in from another school, they all have to sort of adapt into each other. I think from the very first moment that I met Anthony, when he got out of the car with his parents on the visit, you could tell that there's something special about him. Right? He's a dynamic player with a great personality, very affable. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you want your quarterback to probably walk a little bit different than everybody else. He has a lot on his shoulders, but be one of the guys. And I think Anthony's done that really, really well.
Obviously, you can't play any games this spring. So what does growth look like for your defense, particularly your defensive line?
In terms of, when you say growth, in terms of?
What kind of things would you like to see them develop in and get better at?
Oh, yeah.
Now until the end of spring?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just technique. I think whether they were here before whether they're new to us, there's a way to play defensive line. And it's to come off the ball, reset the line of scrimmage, dominate offensive linemen with their hands, a gap and a half, and stop the run and affect the quarterback. And we've got talented players, but I think the onus now comes on the coaches to wherever they are to maximize them and develop them and make them better than they were. And so, just walking around the building, because I was on the road, I think, for 34 straight days, whether it was recruiting or going out doing business type stuff for the program, coming back and seeing what like a Riley Van Poppel looks like, seeing how much physical development he's made, and really that for all those guys. Now just carrying it over into the technique, and I feel very, very good, in interviewing Corey Brown and working with Roy Manning, that their teaching progressions, their focus on technique, their mindsets will be on display with the way those guys play.
I know you've been optimistic about the running backs. What's the next step for those guys this spring that you see them take?
Yeah, just to play. I mean, I think we all got maybe a glimpse in the bowl game of what Mekhi can do. He has a big play threat. He's one of the more competitive guys on our team. Isaiah Mosey's a guy that, he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He's a receiver in the backfield who can also run the football, be physical, pick up blitzes. And so, Quentin Ives, I thought, did a nice job for us in the bowl game. And obviously last year doesn't carry over to this year, but being that physical back that was able to go get it on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. And then the younger guys, Connor Booth has had a year in the system. I'm excited about where he's at. Jamal Rhule, as a young player, he's getting bigger and stronger by the day. And so, they just have to take what Dana's installing, get comfortable with it, master it, whether it's blitz pickup, running the football, or catching the ball at the backfield. And so, they're guys that we know can do it, and they just have to get comfortable with the things that we're asking them to do.
In a broad sense, Matt, excuse me. How do you want to see the way that Dana builds his offense shaped by the strengths that you have on the offensive side, as far as changes you've made at quarterback, and you could even look at receiver and running back?
I want Dana to be able to call the game fearlessly. That's why we brought Dana here. And again, I have to learn. We have to learn from the past, but not live in the past. I think that's really important for us. But he had to do what he had to do as we had injuries and mount up on the offensive line. And you give up 5 sacks here, 9 sacks there. Obviously, we have a couple quarterbacks in Anthony and TJ and Danny that we're one of the few quarterback rooms in the country that have had 3 guys who started a Power 4 opponent game last year. And so they all can move. They're all athletic, so they can move within the pocket and get outside the pocket, extend plays. But we have a big, powerful offensive line that we know can run the football, but just as importantly is the ability to protect. And my hope is that then allows Dana to call run or pass on any play and not have to worry about trying to manage the situation or manage some deficiencies.
Matt, the continuity you have on the defensive staff with Manning, Yelk, Brown, and then obviously Chambliss and McDougal coming in with Orange, how much is that going to help transition the system for you this spring?
I think it's a really good thing, and obviously they've all worked together at different times. Tyler was in Philadelphia last year. Corey was at Miami of Ohio, but they all come from sort of the same family, the same tree, and they speak each other's language, and they're all aligned in terms of philosophically. Hey, this is how we do this, right? It's not a D-line coach teaching something that's not in line with what Rob wants. And I think the thing about Rob is there's no doubt that he knows exactly what he wants. There's no gray area, and so I think it allows us to move forward really rapidly with everyone understanding that they're being taught the right things for this system. Rob can command it as the coordinator, and I look for guys to play a really integrated style of football, kind of all sort of on the same page.
You have officially announce Brett Maher as a coordinator and Nick Humphrey as the co-coordinator at special teams. What do you like about what they bring to the table? I know you've talked about them before, but just in making that decision.
I think the biggest thing about special teams wise is we liked some of the progress that we made last year, and I liked the system, and I liked the teaching progressions, and I liked the day-to-day transferable skills that that blend over. And so I thought Coach Eckler did a great job of bringing that here. And then when he made the decision to move on, I didn't want to start over with a third special team system. I kind of like what we were doing. And I'll start with Nick. Nick's obviously played in it. He's coached in it. He knows it. I think he's a really special young coach that's going to have a lot of success. And Brett, first and foremost, he loves Nebraska. And he's not here to make a name for himself. He's here to help Nick probably someday become the coordinator, and he's here to help Nebraska. And so they can continue the system. And you look at what Brett's done, even since he's been here, in his first year, Johnny was, really struggled early as the kicking coach, and as Brett worked with him, whether it was making 250-plus yarders at Ohio State or making 8 of his last 9. And we had some snapper issues, and we went out and got Aiden Flegge off the general population of campus. And Brett working with those specials, he got better and better and better. This year, Kyle Cunanan kicked 14% better than he'd ever kicked before at a much higher level and a much more difficult stadium to kick in. And so everything that Brett's touched during his time here has simply improved. And so we're able to keep the same system. We're able to keep 2 guys that have worked really hard at it. And I knew pretty quickly that Brett was going to be the guy. And, when you take a position like that, you have to be willing to handle like the highs and lows. You have to be, willing to stand out front and catch the arrows as they hit you. And, Brett's done that for a long time, as a professional player. He's been in some of the rooms with some of the best special teams coaches in the world. And, John Bones Fossil and many, many more. And so he's been around it at a high level. He's produced in his time since he's been here. I think he loves this place and only wants to see it be great. And he and Nick, I think, are going to do a really great job.
How do they divide the schematic responsibilities, the strategy of special teams that goes beyond coaching the specialists? Is that more Nick's area?
No, I think it's both of them. I mean, even last year, Josh did a lot of the kickoff return stuff, and Nick did a lot of the punt return stuff, and Mike obviously oversaw it, and Brett was in there all the time. And I really have enjoyed in the last couple of years even just dealing with Brett on the sidelines. And hey, I wouldn't kick this year, I'd go for it. Or at Ohio State, he's like, hey, he'll make this. So he's had to make those calls, and it's really easy to sit in a room and say, I think we should do this, I think we should do that. It's hard to make the call. And so he certainly is 1A, but Nick's right there at 1B, and I know they're going to mesh well together. I mean, I know Brett's met with every single player that's in a position that would normally play special teams, whether they're a starter at linebacker or third string. He's met with every player. They all are very comfortable with Nick. And I walked by yesterday. They're meeting with every coach. And just in terms of, hey, here's how we're going to coach this. I want to make sure your guys are hearing it. So in terms of the schematics, I think they'll do it together. But the ultimate call will fall on Brett.
What's the thought process behind moving to afternoon practices, at least for the spring?
It will be in the afternoon in the fall too. We've studied a lot of people, and I think there's a large part of us that likes the morning practices. But this league's a lot different now. I mean, there was twice last year that we went to the East Coast and they came back and played a Friday game. That takes a toll on your body that week, and then certainly the weeks thereafter. And so as we're just chasing edges, we're chasing sleep, we're chasing. Obviously, sometimes here it can be 20 degrees at 8 o'clock in the morning and maybe 50 in the afternoon. Which what does that matter? I mean, we don't care about the cold necessarily, but the way the grass feels, how all those different things. So we looked at all the CFP teams, half of them in the morning, half of them in the afternoon. But as you started looking at the teams in the northern part of the country, that have to deal with some weather, and certainly the Big Ten teams, a lot more of them were in the afternoon that are having success. And so I've done it both ways. It doesn't really matter to me necessarily, but the impact of travel is something that I think just this will be a 1 bye week year. And great friend of mine, Joey McGuire, he made that change, I think last year or the year after, and just him sharing with me why he did it. So, it was something that we went with talked to our doctors about, our sports science about, everybody, and then ultimately just made that call.
How did the team take that?
I didn't really ask them. We just say,
I mean,
I mean, we got great dudes, man. They they just show up and work. I mean, there's really no questions from them. And then I'm sure most of them, maybe like getting done earlier in the day. I know the coaches, I think they like getting done earlier in the day sometimes, but most of us don't sleep past 5 anyway. I'm sure our guys like being able to sleep in a little bit later.
Would Monday be your off day still?
We haven't gotten into that part yet. I mean, we're still working on there's some just class parameters around that we have to kind of work around.
So when it's after, like, what time is that? What time does it start? What time does it end?
In the fall? Yeah, we'll probably be done by the 2:20 class, whatever the time the 1 o'clock class ends at 2. So we'll probably be out there from old school, like 2:30 to 6:30.
When it comes to Calandria's tape, he obviously has a lot of flash plays. He cut down the turnovers from his time at Virginia. How important is this spring for Dana and Glenn to kind of show him when to be athletic and when to not be reckless?
I think that's probably true for everybody, right? I mean, the thing about him is, he's played a lot of football. He's got a lot of games. I know offensively, we certainly want to be more explosive. And so you want to be explosive whilst, we did a great job last year protecting the football. We only had 10 turnovers. That's we were positive in the turnover margin for the first time since I think like 2016. And so, we went from my first year here, minus 17 to plus 2 last year. But a lot of that was, we didn't have maybe all the explosive plays that we'd want. So I think we want Anthony to go out there and play fearlessly. Dana and Glenn do a really good job of training quarterbacks. And I just want him to take another step in his career, after playing really, being a starting quarterback for 3 years in college football. And this be an opportunity for him now.
Is it easier for a guy like Calandria or any of the new guys to be a leader quicker because there's so many new guys?
Yeah, I think it's I think that's probably true everywhere in today's college football. There's not many teams playing in the college football playoff that aren't playing with a transfer quarterback, and I just think it's it might still feel weird to us, but it's the new normal for these kids. I think when you look on social media, more kids now announce that they're staying than necessarily even leaving. It's just they kind of have all grown up this way, and so. I think, in the ecosystem of a football team and a football locker room, you can't manufacture leadership. I think sometimes when you do and you try to force it as a coach, people resent it because they know that guy's really not a leader. So, I think Anthony's deferred to, TJ and deferred to the other guys in terms of, hey, I'm just trying to learn my way here. And, we'll let that evolve naturally as the spring goes on and into the second phase of spring training.
The new normal of getting through the first year of revenue sharing and ever evolving NIL. Did you feel like you had enough for what you wanted to do in the transfer portal?
I think we have had more than we ever have, but as we've ascended, other people have certainly ascended, right? And so, sometimes people ask me, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? And there's a finite amount of dollars that are available. So my job's not to complain; it's to figure it out with whatever we have. But there are $40 and $50 million rosters in 2026 in college football, and so we are grateful. Troy's worked really hard. Troy Dannon's worked really hard to get us in a position where we're hopefully within striking distance of some of those other teams, and we have had more than we've had previously. So that's kind of where we're at, but there is no limit maybe on what some people are doing.
And that kind of along those same lines, maybe. Kind of topical in college sports, especially in basketball now. With Alabama had the guy come back from the G League and played, and then you got the guy down at Baylor, Najee, who's played in Europe, of course, and the summer league and the NBA. If that moved over to football, would you take a guy who was maybe an unsigned free agent that got cut in training camp? Would you take a guy like that?
Would you?
What's your thought on?
Would you take a guy that was good enough to be in an NFL camp?
Yeah.
Heck yeah, I would.
What do you think of that whole the evolution of all that?
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I think all of us as coaches, we're going to do whatever we can to have an advantage. I thought last year Dan Lanning, who's a good friend of mine, said it really well. Like, other people might say we're spending money to win, and the reality is, just because you have money doesn't mean you're going to win. But very few teams are going to win without it. I think you see that in Major League Baseball, and so whether it's getting a former player, getting someone from the Canadian League, getting some, I think all of us are going to chase whatever edges we can chase.
On the other side of that, looks like your roster's at 115. Are you at the limit considering the number that you designated as non-counters after the settlement last year? And then how many roughly do you still have as walk-ons just in terms of not receiving traditional scholarships?
Yes, we're under the limit. We still have several guys not receiving scholarships. So there's some talk about. I think they're saying now that you can scholarship everyone. That'll be an internal decision by our administration if they're going to let us scholarship everyone. And I don't know exactly how far that's progressed. I'm trying to stay very small picture right now and just kind of worry about our roster. I would love it if every guy on our team, we paid for them to go to school. We just were in there running. I don't know, maybe 8, 9 half gassers. We practiced for an hour, walk through for an hour, then ran conditioning. There's no different times for the walk-ons than there are for the guys making revenue sharing. So I certainly wish and hope that I wish every student athlete on this campus, could do it because they all work really, really hard. But as of right now, not everyone on our team is on scholarship.
Pastor, a nice compliment for Jeep Wade last night on the radio about some of the portal guys. Have you already seen his impact as just, with the recruiting and some ideas that you might implement going into the spring with the O-line?
In terms of recruiting?
Yeah, recruiting and also just like his ideas that he's maybe taken from Georgia Tech that you can implement this spring in some of the stuff you do.
Yeah, well, first of all, in terms of recruiting, Paul Mubenga left here, and if there was a meter on him coming to Nebraska, the minute they leave campus on the visit, and I think he went to an SEC school and then another SEC school, it gets less and less and less by the day, and literally Jeep just would not allow that to happen. He just willed it to happen, and I really think that in today's day and age, that's what you need. You need position coaches who get players to want to come play for them, who they can express a vision for that player of how I can help you maximize your career and maximize your opportunities both at this level and next. And I think between, we talk a lot about Jeep. I would not minimize Lonnie Teasley. I mean, he's one of the best recruiters in the country, and he's a great, great football coach. But Jeep, I thought, did a great job in the portal with those guys. He's doing a great job in high school recruiting. Players love him. He's got an infectious personality. And then, from the day he got here, we officially carried over nothing, right? One of the lessons I probably learned last year was don't ask someone to coach something that isn't theirs. Don't ask them to continue doing what we did. And so Jeep got here, and Jeep's completely aligned with me. We've worked together, right? I know exactly who he is. In the bowl game, you saw some early success, in terms of some of the things that we did. I mean, I just think it was just not all the way baked yet in terms of, the way we're asking them to do it. And there's lots of different ways to do it, but Jeep has his way, and we're coaching the offensive line that way moving forward.
With how different the transfer portal is from NFL free agency, what can you say about the job Pat Stewart's done, and how much do you and him really have internal discussion about, I think this guy's worth this, I think this guy's worth this?
Yeah, Pat has to handle all the numbers, right? Both for our players. It's really my job and the coach's job to express a vision for each player and what we think that value is. Pat comes from a very systematic world in the National Football League where we all have X amount of dollars. Now in the NFL, you can carry money over from year to year. So, some years you might have more than you had. But, what he's had to probably adapt to is this landscape's different, right? And you really don't know in the NFL if someone calls you and says, hey, I'll give you, right now I have 2 years, $8 million for Sean Callahan from Atlanta. If we didn't do it, if all of a sudden he signed for 2 years for $4 million, we knew that guy was lying to us. But there really is no transparency in college because we don't know what everyone's making on every team. So it's really hard maybe to make valuations. What I think Pat's done a great job of is just realizing the players that we think we need based upon the resources that we have and doing the best that we can to get those guys here. As coaches, sometimes we really also want this guy but we just can't maybe do it. We really want to retain this guy, but we just can't do it. But Pat's had to be the discipline in that while at the same time being creative and learning a new system. And I would not want to minimize, I went on the road with Keith Williams. He and I were on the road for 14 straight days because we got stuck because of ice. And I tell you what, he's on the phone 18 hours a day. Like he just is absolutely, part of the straw that stirs the drink in terms of his vision. And Logan Holgerson, as the assistant GM, working with all the other aspects of this. And so I think they're really a great group of guys with a great team with them that are doing a great job of putting together the personnel. But Pat, I think he'll only get better and better and better as maybe there is some normalcy. So there's some sort of we all kind of do know the rules because, when the season ended, we thought there were some rules that now aren't there, and there's some rules that might be coming back, and so we're all trying to navigate that. But Pat, I thought, did a great job, and I was really happy with our ability to retain the players on our team that we felt like we needed, and they'll continue to do it. But we work great together, but in terms of the actual dollars and cents, I don't sit there and say, hey, I think he's worth this, I don't think he's worth that. It's more, hey, I need this guy for this, and we think this guy can do that, and then allowing him to negotiate with the players' representative and see if we can come to an agreement.
Going back to Jeep and Lonnie with the O-line, are there specific positions that they'll take at practice?
Yeah, so I mean, Jeep's coaching the offensive line. Lonnie's in the room with him. Lonnie's helping from a big picture standpoint, and also, they might break it up right and left. They might break it up setters and guards with tackles. I mean, they have a great long history together, so they work together with that. But when you walk into that meeting, I sat in that meeting room this morning, right, while they were going through their meeting, and Jeep's heading the meeting, and I might walk by Lonnie's office and see him in there with Claude and Puma, a young freshman, trying to. We're trying to coach, the 400 level, but some of those guys are trying to learn the 100, 200 level. And so Lonnie's also doing a great job of helping that.
Anything else, Coach?
Thanks, guys.